Hey there, welcome to the DFS Build NBA edition. I'm Kevin Roberts, joined with Taylor Smith. We are about to go over the Tuesday NBA DFS slate over at DraftKings. It should be a fun night. Yesterday it looked and felt so good. And then Denny Avdia got in foul trouble. Tyrese Maxey took forever to get there. Jalen Brunson felt like a smash play with Cat out, and then he could not hit a shot early on. It was bad. It was good until it was bad. So anyways, rinse and repeat, flush that one down the toilet. We are going to try to win again tonight. A lot of good options on the schedule here, a lot of good games, and also a lot of really good plays already standing out. Our goal is to help you win, and we do that by walking through each slate. We go and look at the top plays at each position, highlight the ones we like the most, and hopefully help you win. If it does help you in any way, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, check the link in our profile here on YouTube and hit up our Discord to get into the community. Ask all the questions you have. 5:30 to 6 p.m. We have a chat live up until lock. So take advantage of all of that and be sure to subscribe before you head over there. All right, let's get into it, Taylor. We have LaMelo Ball leading the way with a 53.5 fantasy projection per our projections here. And obviously, if that ownership holds, that looks pretty appealing. The Suns kind of kept Tyrese Maxey from blowing up for a good portion of last night, but he did end up getting there in the end. One would imagine that if LaMelo Ball can get off to a hot start, he could be an absolute smash. The projections suggest that. Right there with him is Trae Young, and they're about the same price. So clearly, these guys stand out as the top two plays. And if you're looking at ownership, I mean, LaMelo does quickly stand out as a more compelling play. That said, Trae is in a way better spot against the Wizards. So how are you looking at this? Do you have a lot of interest in LaMelo, or are you just going to eat the chalk with Trae Young?
I'll play them both. Entering multiple lineups, of course. Probably not playing them together. It's a lot to spend at one position. But, LaMelo is going to be under-owned. It looks like it's 33 minutes in the last game, his first game back from an injury. Not expecting a ton more than that, if any more than that, but at the ownership, I think he's a really strong play. Trae Young without Jalen Johnson is the obvious play. The Utah matchup is as good as it gets. They're the worst defense in the NBA. So I don't think you're wrong to play Young. LaMelo is just kind of a tournament-only type thing at the ownership. Not someone you're looking at in cash, obviously, but yeah, I have nothing to say that's bad about Trae Young. I think it's an awesome spot. The role is speaking for itself. Without Johnson in there, that's a pretty big deal. So both are great. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, this feels a lot like a situation a couple weeks ago where we did a video and it was the same situation, and it was LaMelo and SGA. And SGA was, I believe, facing the Wizards. And we played LaMelo because he was going to be lower owned and he project about the same. I feel like, again, Trae is just the more obvious play. I think this is a spot where I probably won't get cute and I'm just going to play Trae. Price is too similar, projections too similar, and matchup is way better. The only deterrent really is the ownership. Like, if you really want to get different, absolutely LaMelo is in play here. I don't even mind pairing them if you're not going to go up and pay for Jokic or Anthony Davis. It's not the worst thing to do. They both project very, very well. And obviously, anytime you can get a really good player at a similar price point and a similar projection at way less ownership, you certainly have to entertain it. So I'm with you. I do not mind splitting the ownership to a degree, but I do think I would still be a little bit heavier on Trae. And this might not be the spot where I care that much about ownership, I don't think. Whatever the case, those guys both look awesome. If you want to play Trae and LaMelo, there's really nothing bad to say about either of them. The difficulty here is there are other options up top, and you can save a little bit of money in the process. DeJounte Murray at 8.8K. The Pels have some injuries. They do get Zion back, so maybe that kind of counters.
Isn't Zion questionable?
Yeah, but he might play. I thought I saw that he was in.
Yeah, I mean, questionable implies you might play.
No, I know, but I thought I saw that he's actually available. Yeah, I think he's available.
I assume he will be because he got upgraded, but
yeah, he's available. So with him back, probably he'll play about 20, 25 minutes, I'm assuming. So that certainly eats into DeJounte's upside. But in theory, DeJounte is still a good play. Who else? Somebody else is out. Trey Murphy's out for them. And Ingram. So there is still the usage there for sure. Wait, DeJounte Murray's even questionable. He is. Okay, so
yeah,
keep an eye on that too. But with those guys out, I think DeJounte is still in play. Personally, though, I would still just go up and pay for Trae Young or LaMelo if I'm going in that range. In a similar price range, let's talk about them real quick. There's also Stephen Curry, there's also Devin Booker, and there's also Tyler Hero. Are you interested in paying for those guys, or are you sticking with LaMelo, Trae for the most part, or going down?
Yeah, I'm not into Hero. I do like Curry a little bit, just under 9K. I think he's in a pretty good spot against Miami. Miami played double overtime last night. Golden State's a 10-point favorite there, so that's a little bit, but they're favorite. So Curry should still be pretty good for the dollar. I think Murray might be overprojected just because without Trey Murphy, he gets a big usage boost, and Ingram, of course, but they've had very little overlap between Zion and everybody else because Zion's been out since like October. So I think I'll probably bring down the projections on Murray and McCollum, but if Zion happens to be out, which doesn't seem likely at this point, then Murray and McCollum are going to be pretty good without Trey Murphy in there. But for now, I think they're just kind of YOLO dart throws. Who is the other expensive one you named? Devin Booker. I'm not really on that. No. Charlotte's not been quite as bad defensively. I don't know. Booker just seems a little overpriced. I do think KD is okay again, but Booker's not really on my radar.
Yeah, I'm with you here. I think also just the fact that the Timberwolves are not like a very inviting matchup either. Like, okay, if you want to play DeJounte Murray or CJ McCollum with Ingram and Trey Murphy out, the usage is there for them to get there. I just don't see the need. I think LaMelo and Trey are better spends over DeJounte. I think they're better spends over Curry and Devin and Hero as well. And right in that same range, you have Fred VanVleet going down from McCollum, $600. You have Austin Reeves. You have Colin Sexton, who we're going to talk about more in a little bit. Like, I don't know. Like if there's nowhere else for you to get different and that's where you need to get different, then that's fine. Like you can do that in tournaments, but that's why they're tournament plays, because they just don't, to me, they're not priorities and they don't really stand out, in comparison to these other guys that absolutely do stand out. Obviously, one thing you could look at is like the Rockets could just completely house the Wizards, right? Because the Wizards are down a couple bodies. Certainly possible. But I would imagine that most of the Houston plays that you're interested in using are probably going to get there in 3 quarters anyways on account of the housing, right? So if they do, in fact, destroy the Wizards, this is something you say all the time. Anytime I am like, but Taylor, blowout. You're like, well, maybe, but they'll probably crush before the game is over. And I agree with that. So for the most part, I think I'm just going to stick with Trey and the Rockets guys. So speaking of the Rockets guys, Fred VanVleet is the most expensive one this side of Şengün. But since we're on the guards, how are you feeling about him and the other Rockets guards, assuming Jalen Green is in or out?
Yeah, I mean, VanVleet's the only point guard. I think he's a really strong play, like not going to be super popular compared to the other Rockets. Like Thompson and Green are probably going to be owned a little bit. The Green status, I think they're phenomenal plays. Like Amen is probably a staple. Jalen Green, if he's in, is someone I have a lot of interest in. I'm a little concerned about playing him into ownership, but maybe the Q tag brings it down a little bit. I think VanVleet, I'd have to see how the lineups look, but I might go like a max one of VanVleet and Green just because I'm not sure both of those guys are getting 50 to 60 in the same game. So I think that's a rule you can make that would make you a little bit different. But, Washington's the second worst defense in the league, right behind Utah. Pace up spot for Houston. Their total is like 10 points higher than season average, which is something we saw the other night against the Lakers as well, and they smashed in that game. So I feel good about it. I think you can play 3 Rockets in a lineup. But like I said, I'd probably separate Green and VanVleet.
Yeah, it certainly depends. I think a lot depends on the status of Jalen Green, and there's also Tari Eason to a lesser degree. I mean, the Wizards, you do have to keep an eye on the status of some of these Wizards guys, though, namely Jordan Poole. Like, if Poole is not there, that's 20-plus points that is going to be missing that could keep this game competitive, and Koulibaly is also questionable, I believe. So Wizards are horrible defensively, so there's that. But the pace thing that the Wizards bring to the table, I think they're 4th in pace. That could be less of an asset here if the game gets out of hand. But like I said, I just don't really care that much about the blowout risk. I'm just going to hope that the matchup takes care of that for the most part. So working our way down here, Derek White is questionable. If he's in at 7K, I think he's okay. Not really a priority for me with Boston otherwise healthy. Obviously, him possibly being out would open things up for Peyton Pritchard, who is 5.9K, would then be pretty appealing. And then you can obviously look at the other Boston guys that we'll touch on. Colin Sexton, though, feels like one of the best values of the entire slate and probably the best value at point guard in general at 6K. There's no Jordan Clarkson, no Keontae George, and possibly no Lowry Markkanen, and there's no John Collins. So Jazz against Hawks, Jazz are another team that could get absolutely, blown away here for sure. But the usage for Sexton in the matchup with the Hawks, who are a fast-paced team that do not defend well, pretty darn appealing, and I see him as a core play.
Yeah, I think the field's going to agree. He might be the most popular player on the slate, but I don't have any reason to say that you shouldn't play him. Like, he's cheap, the usage is there, he's going to be the hub of the offense regardless of the marketing news. So great play. Nothing more to add. I think DiVincenzo's another probably core play. Under 5K, he started last night over Mike Conley, played about 30 minutes in a much tougher spot against the Clippers. Tonight they play the Pelicans, another team that's near the bottom in defensive efficiency. Great spot for Minnesota in general. I think they're one of my favorite teams to target. I think the field's going to be there on him as well, but the shooting guard eligibility really comes in handy. And I think Collins, Sexton, and DiVincenzo being such obvious plays might kind of bring down the ownership on Trae Young a little bit. Like, he'll still be chalky, but I don't think we're talking about a 40% owned Trae Young or anything. So the value pieces are great. The spins are great. I think another value piece that could fly under the radar is Jaden Hardy. We're seeing some other cheap guys project to be popular, but Hardy has a role without Luka and Kyrie Irving. The Mavs are on a back-to-back. Of course, he didn't start last night. Probably won't start again tonight, but the Lakers are not a good defensive team. The Mavs are at home. He's 4.4K, not projecting to be owned. I think in a tournament set, you should definitely get some Jaden Hardy.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with Mavs because what the hell were they doing last night? I really liked Spencer Dinwiddie, I liked him a little bit, and I really liked Quentin Grimes. I assumed one or both would start, and I guess they've rolled out Najee Marshall as their point guard.
Hopefully not Najee Harris.
I know, right? I just did an NFL video with Najee Harris, so I had Najee on the brain. But the Mavs are gross. I don't know what they're thinking anymore. So I don't know. Jaden Hardy feels a little bit thin for me. Just
guys like Vit Krejci and Isaiah Collier are chalk, I will just simply play Jaden Hardy at no ownership instead.
I mean, if Jaden Hardy is going to be completely unowned, yeah, sure. I don't know. Isaiah Collier doesn't feel that thin though. The Jazz are down immensely. I mean, the Hawks are a really good matchup. I don't mind Collier. Vit Krejci though, that's a big hell no for me. I don't want to chase the one good Krejci game. Everybody else can do that. If he's going to be chalky, good luck. Bob Carrington at 4.9K, he also is questionable. But if he's in and Koulibaly or Poole are out, he looks really good. Like, I don't mind him at all. 31 plus minutes in each of his last 3 games, 30 plus fantasy points in 3 of his last 5. Like, the role is there, the matchup is there, still too cheap. Probably viable even if those guys are in. Just obviously much more appealing if they're out. I really like the DiVincenzo call. I definitely prefer him to start, but if he's going to be in there against the Pels for 30 minutes, that looks really good. Honestly, at his price with the usage he gets, even if he doesn't start, I think he's still in play. He just isn't as appealing because obviously he'd feel a bit safer if he ends up starting again.
I'd be shocked if he didn't start since they won last night, and Mike Conley
there's no reason for him to not.
I feel like he's pretty safe.
I would agree. He should. I just obviously always keep an eye on the starting lineups because it does change. Azor Thompson, I'll say it every time. Like, that's all you need to know. One time. It only needs to happen to you one time for a guy to look really good, doesn't start, and then he plays like 14 minutes and just completely craters you. Or Jaime Jaquez, triple-double, 60 fantasy points last night. But the last time I played Jaime Jaquez, he got like 9 fantasy points. So because I thought he was going to start and he didn't. All right, so Isaiah Collier, like I said, projected for 28 minutes. I'm okay with it. I think if you're looking at him or Krejci's a big no. Collier is fine. And if you feel good about the Jaden Hardy minutes, I'm okay with that. I like the logic there. But I think Collier feels safer if that is.
I don't know why. Like, Hardy's a way better per minute guy, and Collier is shitty. So I don't want to play a bad player into ownership like Collier.
Well, first of all, because the Mavs didn't even start a true point guard last night, so that's what the fuck was that. And then also they have 2 capable guards in Dinwiddie and Grimes that could end up getting minutes above Hardy. You just never know. they've never done anything with Hardy that makes me feel like they even like him at all. So like, it just feels like it's tough to trust. The thing with Collier, at least, is it's a really good matchup and a good DFS environment in general. And they have like nobody. It's basically him and Sexton at guard right now. Like that's it. Especially if Sensabaugh is out. He's another perimeter guy that just won't be there if he's indeed not going to play because he is questionable. But I don't mind your logic. Like it's totally fine. All right, I think that's it for point guard. You were talking about Timberwolves. I am with you. Obviously, in DiVincenzo, he's going to be a little bit chalky. Anthony Edwards does project to be owned too. The Pels are a really good matchup. He comes in with the best projection among shooting guards. He looks really good, 8.4K. He's really picked it up lately, been very, very good in his last 2 games. I talked about him yesterday, and he did deliver. I think he had 61 fantasy points. Once again, not going to tell you not to play Anthony Edwards, 8.4K, totally fine play. The only issue is 2 guys look really, really good with similar projections and just as good of matchups, if not better, and they're way cheaper. Amen Thompson and Jalen Green both look awesome. If Jalen Green is in, I still like them both, but Jalen Green is a little bit cheaper. And if Jalen Green is out, Amen Thompson would be like the hammeriest of core plays. He would just look amazing. I think he's a play anyways. But yeah, those 2 look great.
The hammeriest of core plays already.
I know. I don't think I'm fading Amen Thompson no matter what the lineup status is. I just think he obviously is like a slam dunk if Jalen Green is out. But you can play them together. You can play as many as 4 Rockets tonight. It's that good of a matchup, and they have been pretty good. And there's Devin Booker. We already talked about him. I don't know. I think if I'm going to pay up here, Anthony Edwards does feel like the play. But the fact that he's going to garner ownership and that there's currently 2 really good leverage options, although they're not really leverage because they're all carrying ownership. I just think they look like obvious plays instead of eating chalky Anthony Edwards. I'd rather just go pay up for Trae Young or one of the other many studs on this slate.
Yeah, I still like Edwards a lot. He made a comment about being tired of passing because he was getting double teamed so often. And then over the last 2 games since he made that comment, he's taken 60 total shots from the field.
That is nice.
If he's going to play that kind of role at 8.4K, I think that's something you still want to buy in on. Like before long, and assuming he continues to do this or try to shoot, his usage has kind of been down this season. Hasn't been driving as often. I think if he's now going to be more aggressive, and the matchup against the Pelicans is one to target for sure.
Right.
I'm happy to take an underpriced Edwards in that ownership. Otherwise, it's the same stuff. DiVincenzo, Sexton, Green, Amen Thompson. I think Bogdan Bogdanovic is a useful value in the mid 4K range without Jalen Johnson. I think Max Christie, again, is an undervalued cheap guy, like guard forward eligible, 4K flat, starting for the Lakers. The Mavs on a back-to-back, not a particularly good defensive team. Christie played 39 minutes in the last game. His ceiling is not amazing. He's not a good per minute guy historically, but since they traded Russell, there are more minutes to go around for him. If he's going to be low owned, I'd much rather play him than an Isaiah Collier in the same price range, for example. And I think on the same team as Collier, Johnny Juzang at 3.9 guard forward is viable, especially if Markkanen's out. Like they are down several guys. He can shoot a little bit. I think for the price, Juzang might be undervalued relative to ownership.
Where am I? Is Christie not a shooting guard?
He's 4K.
Oh, he is. Where am I? I'm missing him here. Let's see. Where is he? Is he shooting guard eligible? Okay, there he is. Max Christie, you elusive bastard. Okay. Yeah, dude, I'm with you on Max Christie. Okay, let's just be clear. He is a not so safe play in terms of just raw fantasy upside and stuff, but he did have this nice 43-point fantasy outing. And the big thing is what you said, 31, 32, 38 minutes. Like if he's going to play monster minutes, I love Max Christie. Plus he's only 4K. So I completely agree. If Field is not going to be on him and they're going to be playing Collier and Krejci and all these spares, Christie, he's currently in my lineup, just so you know. But yeah, I'm with you. I like him quite a bit. Johnny Juzang is an interesting pivot off of the chalky Collier. I don't think I feel any better about him than I do Collier. I think the Max Christie thing is much more interesting. And for the Jazz, I would just, instead of eat the Collier chalk, I would just eat the Sexton chalk and then move along and do something else.
Yeah, it's more of an ownership thing. Like if Juzang is single digit owned and Collier's 20% plus, like just play Juzang.
Yeah, I mean they're
They're
both.
not that different in terms of
Yeah,
range of outcomes and median and all that.
yeah. I think
In
it's
my
kind of
opinion.
like if you want to play either one of them, that's totally fine. I'm pretty indifferent on it. I just think if Collier's going to get a lot of ownership and somebody like Christie is not, I'd rather just not stack up all this crappy Jazz Valley just because they're without bodies. All right, so a small forward, Jason Tatum leads the way with a 49-point fantasy projection. Not the best projection relative to the slate. Matchup with Denver is so-so. The game does have a really nice 236 total, though, and the Celtics, I swear, every single time I write off Boston, their game goes into triple overtime or something stupid, and Tatum gets like 65. I think he's fine. He's probably going to smash because I'm not really on him. The price is good. Potentially no Derek White. It's going to open up a little bit more usage. The projection does not blow me away, though. He's carrying some ownership, too. I just don't – it doesn't feel like something I have to do, especially with guys like Anthony Edwards, other cheaper studs like Trae Young, Şengün. It just doesn't feel necessary. That said, he's probably going to be a little bit less owned than the guys I just spoke about. So if you want to get – pay slightly more and get a similar projection at a little bit less ownership, Tatum is certainly viable, just not something I personally want to do. Amen Thompson is obviously here at small forward. Lauri Markkanen really popping in the projections, mostly because no Clarkson, no George, no Collins. So he is questionable if he's in. He projects well. I don't personally feel great about it because every single time I felt good about Lauri Markkanen, it has not gone well. But 7.4K, all the usage in the world, and the Hawks, in theory, Markkanen looks really, really good here. How are you feeling about Tatum and, in general, spending up at small forward?
Yeah, I'm a little nervous about being under the field on Tatum, but if White is out, like that's a pretty big source of usage and just playing time in general that's going to be missing from the lineup. So Brown, Tatum, Pritchard, Drew Holiday, Porzingis would all get boosts if White is out. White did not go through shoot around with an illness. I feel like he's possibly more likely to be out than in. That being a late game, I don't mind building for that, just projecting White to be out and then getting a few more Celtics pieces. And if he's in, you can always pivot. There's another game after that or at the same time as that one. So I'm not getting to Tatum a lot now, but I feel like once I make that adjustment, I probably will. And I think it's totally fine. Like 10K flat, he's got a nuclear ceiling on that. So fine with playing that. There are a lot of studs on this slate, so I don't imagine he's going to be super popular either. Otherwise, Markkanen I think looks good. If he's in, the usage should just be all his, essentially, with Sexton. Amen Thompson is here. I think another undervalued cheap guy is Cam Whitmore. Very good per minute guy. He's had a role lately for Houston. They're down a couple of rotation forwards with Smith and Eason out. Jalen Green being out means they would need more scoring punch as well. I think Whitmore would probably get steamed in that scenario if Green sits, but as things stand now, he's 4-1. You can play him at both forward spots. There's blowout risk in this game, so Whitmore in theory could benefit if the game gets out of hand, but I think he's viable either way. Like he's super cheap. He's a better per minute guy than these guys like Christie and Collier and whoever else. So happy to be over on him as a cheapie. The expensive stuff I'm not getting to as much. Like Markkanen and Thompson are kind of where I'm drawing a line in terms of core plays at small forward. I think Andrew Wiggins is fine, still under 6K without Kuminga and without Pajemski. Sensabaugh, if he's in, is cheap as well, like essentially the same price range as Whitmore. Going to get some ownership, but he's been very good lately. Gets usage. Didn't start the last game, still got there. No problem with that. I'm curious to see where the Hawkes ownership comes in and Najee Marshall. Hawkes with his triple-double last night. Najee Marshall with his random start under 5K looks pretty good if he starts again. Hawkes is not as cheap, but he is good per minute. Obviously, the ceiling is there, but he's not getting 60 again. So it might be kind of a chase.
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything extra there because I agree with everything you said. Oh, the only thing I will add is Jaylen Brown feels like a more compelling play than Jason Tatum because you save 1.5K. And if you're not playing Anthony Edwards, that's leverage in that position as a pivot. I don't know. I mean, if Jaylen Brown at 8.5K is going to go overlooked and Derek White is out, that's pretty interesting. Like if all the ownership's going to flock to Jason Tatum, I think Jaylen Brown looks really inviting. But like you said, like I don't feel good about Lowry, but everything does look, fine. Like everything's pointing to Lowry being like the second best play at this position behind Amen Thompson. But he's just not been good this year, so it's tough to trust for sure. I'm with you on basically everything else. I'll point out DeAndre Hunter just because no Jalen Johnson, and it's the Jazz that he gets. So the price is not good at 6.9K. I don't love that. But DeAndre Hunter has been very good at scoring on the what?
I didn't know he was that expensive. That's crazy.
I know. The price is gross, but no Jalen Johnson. He could slide into an expanded role from a usage perspective. The matchup is really good. He's been very good at scoring the ball. So I don't mind him as a tourney play. If he got to be chalky at that price, I would not be interested at all. But he should have a chance at popping off here. The minute projection at 29 is what gives me pause, plus the price. So obviously, like, if you're looking at DeAndre Hunter versus Amen Thompson, I will eat the Amen chalk all day. Like, I just don't think you need to get cute in that regard. But if you're looking for somebody in that 7K range and you're not really sure what to do, I think landing on him is not the worst thing in the world. Also, I don't know if you touched on Herbert Jones, but he's getting big minutes, and there's no Trey Murphy. So Zion is back. That could eat into it a little bit, but the fact that Murphy is dead and obviously Ingram is still out, I think Herbert Jones is probably still a safe bet to get 35-plus minutes. So I think
I assume he's going to guard Edwards. I think he's another one of the Pelicans that I have over projected just because of the Zion thing.
Yeah.
Giving some uncertainty. So I'm going to bring him down, but I still think he's playable too.
Yeah, not like, I mean, there's so much other value opening up that I don't think Herbert Jones is a priority, and he's not like normally a super high usage guy anyways. But at 5.4K as a run back from, possibly a team that we're loading up on to a certain degree in Minnesota, I don't think it's the worst way to get exposure to that game, especially since with Zion back, DeJounte and CJ do feel like they're a little bit expensive at this point. Just a cheap way to get there. I think that's it. I mean, Dylan Brooks at 5.1K against the Wizards. It's another Rocket, not a priority compared to the other Rockets, but he plays a shit ton of minutes. So there's that. I think that's it. I'm with you on all these other guys that you said. They're all in play for sure. Namely Cam Whitmore. Keep an eye on the Tari Eason news. I think if Tari Eason's out,
so I'm assuming
okay, yeah. So with Eason out, like right away, Whitmore is in play. If Jalen Green is out, Whitmore might be a core play.
Yep.
Okay, so power forward LeBron James. I love
LeBron James.
I don't know why. Why or how? LeBron James. Okay. Who's that one guy who always over says it? Chris Broussard? LeBron James.
Sounds like something he would do.
Yeah. Okay. So anyways, LeBron James. Decent price, really good projection facing the Mavs. Looks like the best power forward from a spend up perspective. There's still Tatum there, still KD there. If Tatum's going to get all the attention, LeBron looks like a better pivot. I would rather just pivot to LeBron there. But as we've noted, Lowry is not that far away from these guys, and he's way cheaper than them. So feels like it's Lowry at power forward as the top spend up play, and then probably LeBron is ranking second for me. KD still looks good at 9.4K with a solid projection as well. I don't mind paying up here. It's just not really what I'm doing right now because I really like Şengün and Ant. But I don't hate it. Like I think Lowry, KD, LeBron, Tatum, they're all compelling plays.
Yeah, I think KD is going to be under-owned again. Like he struggled last night and still had 42 fantasy points. So he's just got a really high floor and a high ceiling. I still think the Beal thing matters in terms of him being benched, more usage for Durant and Booker in the starting unit. So not a core play by any means, but low-owned KD is obviously someone you can keep in your player pool. Ditto for LeBron, ditto for Tatum. But I do think it is kind of a mid-range position or a value position, like you said. Markkanen, I think Draymond Green is appealing again without Kuminga and without Podziemski. The matchup against Miami is fine, with Miami being fatigued, I assume. Naz Reid, once again, popping as an awesome value. Just the minutes have been pretty secure for him. They've been happy to bench Randall or Gobert and just play Reid in crunch time lately. So no guarantee that continues, but the matchup against the Pelicans, who have zero rim protection, is outstanding. I guess you can make a case for Randall as a mid-range spend as leverage from a chalky Anthony Edwards, but not something I'm like seeking out necessarily. Wiggins, Whitmore, Sensabaugh, Jaquez, you can all play here. I think Kuzma looks good again. No Brogdon. We'll see about these other guys. If Poole is out, Poole's the big one that matters for Kuz. As we saw in the last game, Kuzma certainly got there for the price without Poole. He should be the usage king there. Bad spot, but he's underpriced, so fine with that. Najee Marshall, we talked about a little bit. I think he's a pretty good value again. That's kind of it. Like, there's plenty to like here, and I feel like we've touched on most of it.
Yeah, I don't mind going after Kuz and even Alexander Sarr as runbacks, because if we're going to have a lot of interest in the Rockets, we're obviously going to hope this game stays close. And as we know with Washington games, they often do when you don't think they will, and then it goes into overtime or something crazy. So, I mean, if we're going to load up on 3 or even 4 Rockets guys, why not run it back with a couple of these Wizards guys, especially if Poole and or Koulibaly are out? Sarr does have a minutes cap, but he's quite productive when he's out there. And then Kuzma also kind of limited, but he did play 30 minutes his last game, so that could be lifting a bit. Obviously, Kuz is the more trustworthy option of the two, but I do not mind Sarr if you're kind of in no man's land and looking for a way to get exposure to that offense. I will also mention PJ Washington. The price has come up a little bit, but hey, still no Kyrie, no Luka. Loved him last night. He absolutely smashed. He just has way more usage when those guys are out. So I like him quite a bit. Obviously, Lakers are not a scary matchup whatsoever. I feel like he's going to go over this projection by quite a bit. I think the price tag is also going to scare people away. And just the fact that there's a lot of studs to pay up for and a lot of good value, I think it's like no man's land and nobody's going to go to him. So don't mind him at all if you're stuck in that price range. All right, let's wrap it up at center. Nikola Jokic leads the way with a 63-point fantasy projection. Anthony Davis not that far behind him, but way cheaper. I mean, if he's completely unowned, you absolutely could play Jokic. Boston's not a good matchup. They rank like top 5 against centers. Obviously, you can throw that out the window with Jokic because he can crush. He's had like 80-plus fantasy points in 4 of his last 5 games. He's been crazy. Plus, no Aaron Gordon just opens things up for him. But if you're going to bet against Jokic not nuking the slate, this would probably be the slate to do that. Because not only are there a lot of other good studs up top, there's just a lot of good mid-range options, and it's just not a good spot for Jokic in general. One of his lower projections over the last couple of weeks, and rightfully so, and now he's pushing 13K. I don't know. To me, like if anytime you can project Jokic to be under 10% owned, there's merit to playing him. But I just think this isn't the spot to do it. I think if I'm going to pay all the way up at center, it is going to be Anthony Davis or Şengün. I wish Şengün was projecting a little bit better because at 9.3K, I would really want it to be closer to like 50 or so. So that gets me a little bit more interested in Anthony Davis. But Şengün at 9.3 against the Wizards, who do not rebound well, do not stop anything inside. Şengün looks awesome. All things considered, I'm interested to see if the projection gets bumped up at all. But Şengün feels like the best center play on the board and one of the top studs overall.
Yeah, I think he's obviously totally fine. Like any center against the Wizards is going to be a pretty appealing play. So we'll see about the projection. I might bump it a little bit, but not like excited to play him over 9K just based on how he's played most of the season. He's been kind of underwhelming. If Green is out, he's going to get a huge bump. So there is that to watch for. But there is a lot at center. Like there's a ton of opportunity cost. There are a lot of cheap guys that look pretty good. We've talked about Reed. We've talked about Draymond Green. Daniel Gafford is out. Derek Lively is going to be pretty popular, I would think, as a cheap one. I think he's pretty good. I don't know if he merits like 40% ownership, if that's what it comes to. But at 5-1, like he's pretty good per minute. I don't think the absence of Kyrie and Luka helps him at all. I think it actually hurts him because Luka and him, it's kind of a lob situation.
Yep.
If they're not playing with a point guard like they did last night, he's going to struggle to get easy buckets unless he's offensive rebounding. So a little bit dangerous, I think. I think Mark Williams and Walker Kessler are a couple in the 6K range that look undervalued. Williams' minutes have been on the rise lately. The matchup against Mason Plumlee is pretty appealing. He's just been amazing per minute. It's been kind of underwhelming over the last 2 games with his minutes up, but happy to buy low there if the field is not going to be there. Kessler, just an undervalued Utah guy. I think Kyle Filipowski is another potentially undervalued Utah guy, center only. Tough to get to, but 4-1, decent per minute, should have a role. Feel better if Markkanen's out about that, but fine either way. Don't mind Porzingis at 6'9". That's a pretty cheap price tag on him. You can make a similar case for Gobert at 5'5", which is the cheapest I can remember ever seeing Rudy Gobert. His minutes have been on the decline. He's not been great per minute this season. Saw a few more minutes last night against the Zubats, but not sure this is the matchup for Gobert against a pretty small Pelicans team. I think if Zion plays, he might have a little more merit because Zion's going to be barreling his way into the paint, getting a shot blocked, things like that. So Gobert's fine. Capella and Okongwu are okay without Jalen Johnson. And I don't mind going back to Trace Jackson Davis if people are scared to after his bed shitting 2 nights ago.
He certainly did shit that bed, no doubt about it. Yeah, he's fine as far as a point per dollar play and price play. Don't really love targeting centers against Bam Bam. His minutes projection is a little bit light, so I good value. Probably not where I'm going. Certainly a good pivot off of Derek Lively. I do like Lively still. I like the point about, he doesn't have a really good passer to lob him easy dunks, but this is still a really soft matchup where he could dominate the glass, get blocks, and get easy buckets. So I think he's totally fine at 5.1K. I would certainly keep an eye on his ownership. 24% is a little bit steep, and there are a lot of good values already on the slate, and surely more to come. So if we feel like the ownership's getting crazy and we can get different and feel good about it, then by all means. I mean, only $900 more. Mark Williams projects really well. Don't really love the minutes cap, but the Suns are rolling out Mason Plumlee. That is a good thing for Mark Williams, who's a very good permanent guy. There's one other guy that I was wanting to touch on. I do like the Rudy Gobert call out just because he's 5.5K and he did return to form last night, but I agree that I don't know that this is actually the place to target him. Yeah, maybe I can't remember who it was I was going to call out, but I think for the most part, I agree with everything you said here. I think it's going to be, there are some values here at center, but I think I'm probably going to spend up. Right now, I'm on Şengün, and we'll see what happens. If Jalen Green is in, I'm definitely less interested in a 9.3K Şengün. I will say, though, he had 59 fantasy points against the Wizards earlier this year, so it's definitely a matchup that he absolutely dominated. And while he's been kind of not so great the last 2 games, he's only a few games removed from 2 straight 50-point fantasy outings. So we know he has massive upside. We know it's like the best matchup on the board. So he's in play even if Jalen is in. But if Jalen is out, I think I'm going to lock in on Şengün. And I would imagine, like you said, your projection will spike considerably for him. If Jalen is in, I think Anthony Davis is where I'm going at center if I'm paying up. I just don't think it's a Jokic slate for me. And that is going to lead us right into our final little segment here. Hopefully we can cap it at 40 minutes. Our flag plant and strategy of the night. Do you have an official top play that you feel like you're going to build most of your lineups around? And what is your overall strategy for the night?
It's obviously Amen Thompson. Like, don't overthink it. He played 40 minutes in the last game, starting in place of Smith. So very safe play, even at his kind of elevated salaries. Probably not expensive enough. I guess I would flag plant LaMelo just as an under-owned spend that's not going to garner a lot of attention. Phoenix on a back-to-back hasn't been good defensively to begin with. I feel pretty good about him. The usage is always there for LaMelo. People aren't going to want to play him because Trae Young is in the better matchup in the later game, but LaMelo as a pivot I think is pretty interesting in tournaments.
Yeah, I'm pretty locked in on Rockets and the Jazz Hawks game. And that's not a hot take at all. I think that's just something I'm going to do. And then I'll find ways to get different around it. So the one way to possibly get different, feel really good about it, is to go up and get Anthony Davis because he's in a better spot than Jokic. He's way cheaper than Jokic, and his projection is not that far off from Jokic. So I'm going to let the Jalen Green news dictate things for me a little bit here. If Jalen Green is in, I'm just going to sour on Şengün, and I'm just going to lock in on Anthony Davis. If Jalen Green is out, I think Şengün is the play at center. And I'll just hope that works out to my, in my favor. I'm not opposed to like stacking 2 studs here either. I think I'm just looking at the lower price studs, the guys under 10K. Brow is as steep as I want to go at 10.5. Obviously, there's only one other guy more expensive than him, but I think he is more interesting than Tatum. And I think in a vacuum, I would rather have a low-owned, slightly more expensive Brow than Şengün, Trey, LaMelo, all these other guys who have great ceilings and floors, but I just think Anthony Davis is like basically Jokic on this slate for 2K cheaper. So that's my general approach. Obviously, things can and will change. Taylor's going to update the projections leading into lock. I will be in the Discord, possibly Taylor too, from 5:30 till lock. We won't be available after that, but we will help you finalize some core plays and help you with any questions you have. So head over to our Discord, click the link in this video description or at our channel, and also be sure to like the video and subscribe. All that stuff helps us out quite a bit, and we keep building the community and having a lot of fun and hopefully get a big win tonight. All right, thanks for watching and good luck.